Fragmented, an Android developer podcast where we talk about building good software and becoming better developers. I'm your host, Kaushik. That's been the intro for over 200 episodes. Today, that's about to change. This is a pivot episode. When I started Fragmented years ago, I was an Android developer who couldn't find enough Android developer podcasts to listen to. I joke about this, but in my commute to work, I used to listen to more iOS podcasts because I was so desperate for good developer content. There was a clear gap, and we started Fragmented to fill that gap. I'm feeling that same feeling right now, if I'm being honest. That same gap, but maybe much, much bigger. Everyone is talking about AI, but almost no one is talking about AI the way working software engineers need to hear it. Here's what I mean. There's this term floating around that's set our entire world on fire. Vibe coding. And look, vibe coding is real and it's powerful. If you're not a developer or you're prototyping ideas or you just want to go from 0 to 1, AI can get you there fast. That is a real and fantastic development of these times. But how do you go from 1 to 100? How do you leverage AI to even go from a 1 to 1,000? That's the question not enough people are answering. We need to know how to use AI, not just for the prototypes, but for maintaining large code bases, legacy code bases that just run the world today. How do you build software for that? How do you also keep it maintainable, reviewable, secure? It's important that this software doesn't collapse when someone else has to touch it 6 months later. We need to build software in a way that a team of engineers can work on it simultaneously and not scratch their heads because someone vibe coded an entire part of the code base without really knowing the guts of the system well. It comes back to that point. Vibe coding is great for demos. But let's be honest, software engineering is the job. And I don't see anyone bridging that chasm. That's what I want Fragmented the show to be about. Some of my proudest moments from Fragmented, and I mean this, is when folks walk up to me at a conference or send me a message and say, listening to your podcast helped me get my first job. To me, that's not a small thing. It helped me understand my purpose and drive for doing this show. So when I look at how dramatically the industry is shifting right now, it almost feels irresponsible to stay quiet about the developments in AI, to keep doing what we were doing and then just pretend that the ground beneath us isn't completely shifting is like Wile E. Coyote just running off a cliff. I see this shift in my day job too. We're asking questions like, which tasks should AI touch? How do we help engineers be more productive by not just doing the things that they always used to do before? What do productivity gains in this new world look like? But importantly, how do we not get trapped in an avalanche of AI slop and unreviewable diffs? In this probabilistic world, how do we evaluate outputs and keep the critical pieces of software deterministic? These are real questions, and I don't think enough people are talking about them publicly, at least not in a way that helps working engineers navigate this new world order. And it's easy to be skeptical today about a podcast pivoting to talking about AI. So let me also tell you what this show is not going to be about. It's not an AI news show. There's plenty of newsletters and shows for that. I don't want to just recap or regurgitate that latest announcement made by the big AI labs without also critically thinking through how each of those changes and developments affect you as a developer. There's plenty of hype already. We are not going to tell you that AI will change your life if you just blindly follow these instructions and paste this prompt into your terminal. Don't get me wrong, we'll definitely share tips and tricks and talk tactics, but we'll also mention the failure modes and what doesn't work. That's equally important. That's the stuff that you actually have to contend with when you go back to work and try to ship software. Now, for those of you who've been here since the Android days, I'm still a mobile developer. That hasn't changed. I'm still mostly paid to work on an Android operating system. So here's a small bonus. Every now and then, I'll bring in how we're using AI in mobile specifically. I'm hoping longtime listeners will especially appreciate and enjoy those aspects on not just how AI is changing software as a whole, but also the flavor around mobile. All right, one more thing. Maybe the most exciting thing for both you, the listener, and me. I'm not doing this alone. I went looking for someone who understands that gap that I told you about, the gap between vibe coding and real engineering. Someone sharp, someone who's been saying the right things about AI and isn't interested in hype for just hype's sake. Someone who's really staying ahead of the curve in terms of these developments. Honestly, I'm just as excited to learn from him as I am to host alongside him. I'd like to announce that Iury Souza will be joining us as the new co-host of Fragmented. When I first met Iury and asked him what he thought about AI, he said something that really made me crack up. I figured it would be great to have him start on Fragmented with a bang and just tell you his thoughts directly. So, here's Iury's thoughts on AI.
I got a weird analogy for this, but I think it still works. So bear with me for this one. The fact is, a lot of people talking about AI sound a lot like high schoolers talking about sex. Remember in high school, there's always these popular kids loudly claiming they're doing it all the time. And suddenly everyone starts saying the same thing just because that's kind of what you're supposed to say. But then years later at a reunion, you find that half of them were completely full of BS. That's really what a lot of AI-related content sounds like nowadays. There's people claiming they have 5 agents building apps while they sleep, these perpetual orchestration flows, these I ship a SaaS weekend stories. But then as soon as you start looking for more info, it all sounds very narrow or not even remotely grounded to what you'd expect to do in the context of your day job, right? So our goal here is to bridge that gap and to get into the details of how you can learn to use the tools. Because AI is not only meant to do the work for you. AI can also augment your capacity to ship high-quality code. And I think that's the real leverage. And we have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm super humbled and excited to join Kaushik on this and to share it with you.
Told you he was sharp. So that's the shift we wanted to make. We've already recorded our next episode and it's coming out next Monday. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll find out how the Fragmented sausage is made, so to speak. That's where we share musings around the new logo, changes we're making around the podcast. So remember to subscribe to the newsletter if you're interested in that content. As always, all the links will be in the show notes for this episode. For this big pivot, I'm going to close this episode off by welcoming you back again. Welcome back to Fragmented, an AI developer podcast that helps vibe coders become software engineers one episode at a time. I'm your host, Kaushik.
And I'm Iury, the other host of Fragmented, where I love to talk about using AI to make you a better developer and not just have AI replace your work.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.